Are you getting tired of constantly fighting against life, exhausting yourself to no avail, and getting absolutely nowhere in the process? Because let's face it, our first instinct is to fight. This is what we do. When we are in a difficult life situation, we fight against the situation. When we are experiencing a difficult emotion, we fight against the emotion. Whenever we are experiencing something in our lives that is not desirable, we fight it, and this is part of the problem. See, learning how to surrender to life has been an absolute game changer for my own personal growth and my spiritual development, because once upon a time I used to resist everything. I have learned through a lot of trial and error that resisting your circumstances is not the way to go, and it's not going to bring you joy, it's not going to bring you happiness, and it's certainly going to make a whole lot more friction in your life, which is just going to make everything so much more difficult for you. You might not like who you are, you might not like your life situation, you might feel depressed or anxious, or you're just going through something that you do not enjoy experiencing and you're fighting against it. And if this is the case, I know it is easier said than done, believe me. I know it's easier said than done to just sit with your emotions and your sensations and your feelings rather than combating it and fighting it and resisting it. But you need to trust me that when you actually give yourself an audience and you calm down the mental chatter and you actually sit with yourself and you say, I'm going to experience whatever I need to experience for my own growth, for my own learning, this is when you really start to get that message. You start to learn a lot through this process, and this is when you start gaining the wisdom, the skills, the information necessary to actually transform your life and to put yourself on a better road where you can achieve more happiness, where you can achieve more joy. Therefore, stop fighting against the things that you have no control over and see what happens when you learn to let go of your situation and surrender to it. What non-resistance really means is to find this state of calibration, to find this flow with your emotions, with your feelings, with your life in general. Think about it this way. When you are learning to swim in open water, what is the first thing that you learn to do? You don't push against it, you don't fight it directly, because you know that fighting this current that's stronger than you is never going to lead you anywhere good. Life is sort of like this riptide, and we're all caught in it to some degree, and we can't change the current of it, we can't change the direction it's going, but we can change our response to it. So the act of non-resistance is to recognize that life is going to do its own thing with us, and whether we like it or not, we are caught in this riptide and we have no control over where we are going. So instead, we need to learn to navigate these currents and swim with it. Because believe me, life is going to take you to many odd and undesirable destinations, because that is just part of the life journey. But if you are constantly fighting against it and you are resisting anything that happens to you that you don't like, then I hate to say it to you, but you are in for a really bad time. So the reason why I believe that non-resistance is such an important lesson in our lives is because we really have no control over life. And when we acknowledge that we really have no control over life and the direction that it's pushing us, we learn to find this state of equilibrium, this state of peace, and to navigate the currents within it. In other words, it means to find this sense of flow in your life regarding your emotional body, your mental body, your spiritual body, and to learn how to calibrate yourself to your emotions rather than being in opposition to everything that you are experiencing. So if it wasn't for 3 big teachers in my life, I would probably still resist everything. So the first teacher I had was the ocean. When I first started swimming in the ocean, I was afraid of being in the waves, because if one hit me and I got dumped, I would start to panic, like many of us do. But what I learned is to surrender to that situation. So instead of being scared of it, instead of resisting it, nowadays I just let my body completely go. I just allow my body to roll like a rag doll without needing to breathe, without needing to get out, without needing to have control over the situation. And the ocean in this sense has been such an important teacher for me, because it has taught me that when I am going through a situation that I have no control over, if I surrender to that situation and I do absolutely nothing, there is a stillness inside that you can access. So nowadays, I love getting dumped by the waves. I love going to surf beaches and having a huge wave smash me and to ragdoll and to tumble and tumble and tumble without knowing when it's going to end, because I find comfort in that. I know that I will be okay. I'm not going to hit my head on any rocks. I'm not going to drown. But as long as I am calm and I'm with that situation fully, then it will always have a happy ending. The second big teacher in my life of non-resistance is psychedelics or plant medicines. So especially when I was younger, I started to get into psychedelics quite a lot, just exploring my own consciousness, going into my trauma and using it as a way to just discover myself. Of course, it was a matter of time until I started to have some pretty heavy experiences. And of course, when you are balls deep in a psychedelic trip, there is no getting out of it. So again, you have two options. You can either resist it, which leads to panic, it leads to a lot of stress, and you can really do yourself a lot of damage if you fight against the situation when it's so much stronger than you, or you can surrender to it. You can lie down and say, okay, this sucks, but I'm just going to find that sense of peace within it. I'm just going to go through these emotions. I'm going to go through this sense of fear or this panic. And when you do that, it actually turns into a beautiful experience. Often when you surrender to the psychedelic experience, if it's getting too heavy, then you find this space of just bliss within it. And it really is like that. Of course, it can be difficult to surrender to it because when we are going into these states of consciousness that are very foreign and very weird, and we think we're losing our minds and we don't know what's happening, the last thing we want to do is just be with that sensation. So it really is training. Like, it does take time to train yourself to do this, but when you start doing it, you realize that the fear is all in your head. The third big teacher of non-resistance is travel. So I have a nomadic lifestyle. I have been traveling for about 8-9 years now, pretty much consistently. I haven't gone back to Australia many times throughout this process, and I've lived in maybe 10 countries since then. One thing I've learned about traveling is that, especially when I started doing it, everything went wrong all the time. I would constantly lose stuff, I would get robbed, I would be in weird situations. Nothing would go to plan, and this would cause me a whole lot of stress. So again, I had these same two options. I could either fight against this stress and I could try and gain control over the situation, which just leads to more stress and to panic, or I could find that sense of safety and stability within myself. I could go into these emotions and say, hey Daniel, it's actually not so bad. Let's look at this. What's the worst thing that can happen here? Traveling has been such a beautiful teacher because it has told me that as long as I go into these feelings and these emotions and I actually give myself an audience rather than combating or pushing or stressing out and panicking, then that is when I start to gain some clarity. So I really do mean it when I say that non-resistance is more of a philosophy than something that you do, because it applies to every dimension of your life experience. And honestly, it's only been in recent years that I've started to see non-resistance from, I guess I would say, more of a holistic perspective. Now I sort of see our bodies like channels. There is a constant flow of information passing through us and passing out of us, and this involves our belief systems, our thoughts, our feelings, our reactions to different things. And when we resist a situation, it's almost like we start blocking something up. So more information is trying to come in or pass through us, but at the same time, everything is blocked up. So we don't have an easy passage for it. Because our bodies, our minds, our emotions, they all work as this one giant ecosystem. If you block a small part of it up, then you'll find that the rest of the ecosystem starts blocking up as well. So when we recognize that we are this ecosystem of information that is constantly interacting with the environment around us and passing through us, then we give that an audience, and instead of blocking it up and holding something at bay and saying, no, I don't want to experience this because it's painful, we allow everything to pass through and take its natural course. The way that I see non-resistance nowadays is to remove the blockages in ourselves to allow information to pass through. So for example, if you are experiencing a dense, heavy emotion, or you're going through something that you really don't want to experience and it hurts, the best way to remove the blockage is to just experience it. Allow yourself to experience these emotions, go through the motions, allow yourself to cry, allow yourself to have the physiological responses, allow yourself to burn off the energy, to vent to someone, and then you'll notice that this emotion starts to seamlessly pass as long as we give it an audience. This is really what I mean when I say there shouldn't be a current of resistance in your emotions, in your mind, in your spiritual body as well, and you should be in calibration with everything that is happening to you. This is really the art of non-resistance. This is what it means to be in this state of flow with your life experience. And when you do remove all of these blockages and you allow everything to take the natural passage, then you'll find that you'll have this greater sense of peace and this greater sense of equilibrium with the universe, and you won't have this giant storm churning in your head all the time, or these worries that you are constantly thinking about, or these stresses. So I'm going to go through some different elements of non-resistance to help you embody this philosophy and see the bigger picture of it. The first thing that you want to do is let go of the result. Stop having expectations of what something needs to be, or where you need to be in the future, or what a particular outcome must be, and instead be open to any possibility. Be open to where anything might go naturally. Of course, if you have some control over the situation, then you can guide it in the right direction, and you can sort of push it in the direction that you want to go, but recognize that the results might not fruit the way that you expect them to. And life can send you in a very different direction very rapidly. So try not to hold on to the result, or try not to think that you need this particular outcome to be happy. You need something to happen for you to move forward with your life, because one way or another, you will move forward with your life. You will learn what you need to learn. And that's really what you need to try and embody. Realizing that life will bring you in its own direction at its own time, and as long as you are holding on to these expectations and these ideals, then you are just causing this forcing current within yourself, and you're not allowing your life experience to unfold in the way that it should. The next point is to allow rather than combat. So again, if it is a thought that you are experiencing, and maybe you don't want to think about these things, but naturally your mind is pushing you in this direction, then give it an audience. Allow yourself to think about these things even if you don't want to. The same goes with emotions. If an emotion is chipping at you and saying, hey, look at me, I'm here, but you don't really want to look at it because it's a painful emotion, maybe it's a trigger, maybe it's just something that you're not ready to confront right now, but it keeps surfacing and it keeps showing its head, then look at it because it's trying to tell you something. So you really just want to allow your thoughts and emotions and sensations to happen and let them run their natural course without intervening, without pushing them away, without holding them at bay just because they're uncomfortable. The next point I want to make is to practice non-reaction and rather observation, because let's face it, when we are thrown into a situation, we tend to react quite strongly to it, and we tend to create a lot of friction just through our reactions. So what you can do is really just try and observe your reactions and observe your situation from a higher perspective, from a third person perspective, you could say, and really just look at yourself and look at what is happening and how you're reacting to certain triggers or certain things that are happening in your life. Maybe they're people, maybe it's a situation that is happening. And try and take a perspective where you are looking in on yourself rather than embodying yourself in that situation. So non-reaction can be tricky to sort of get our head around to begin with, but the more that we practice just observing our situations, observing our emotions, observing our triggers and the different things that are coming up, the more we start to build this awareness of them and we cultivate this deeper understanding where we're not really just caught in the middle of it, and we're not being thrown around by our emotions and by reactions and by other people. So the next point I want to make is to surrender your control. You know, this has been a big one for me, is to surrender my power to God, or to the universe, or to whatever that you believe in, if you believe in something. Because when I am going through a really dark, painful situation, and I don't know what to do, and I'm scared, and like I don't know whether I'm going to get through the situation or not, that's when I turn to God and I say, this is in your hands. If this is supposed to be the end, then so be it. It's in your hands now. I don't have control over this. If this is supposed to be my end, if something terrible is supposed to happen, then I trust that it's supposed to happen. I trust that I am supposed to experience this for some sort of reason. Most of the time, I feel this sense of calm. It's almost like I'm being spoken to, and I feel this sense of peace and this sense of gratitude, and suddenly I'm like, wow, you know what? I have a different perspective. My problems really aren't that bad. And even if they are, even if I die, which most of us consider to be the worst thing is us dying, to me that's not such a bad thing. I'm not afraid of death. I'm not afraid to go and, I'm actually excited to explore these other realms. I'm excited to see the astral and to go into these new places. So death really isn't that big of a deal. If it comes, of course I'm going to try and avoid it, don't get me wrong. I will do everything in my power to have a great life and to live. But if I'm ever in a situation where I just don't know, and I have no control and I have no power, I surrender it over to God. You can choose to step out and accept your life situation for what it is. Because even if your life situation is not desirable right now, I guarantee you that give it time and it will change. Life has its way of leading us through these rapids, through this river, through this riptide. The universe is trying to help us. It's trying to lead us into new territory. It's trying to help us grow and to expand ourselves and to evolve. But if we resist it and we create these mental, emotional, and spiritual blockages, and we don't allow this passage of information through us, then we are just doing ourselves a disservice in the long run. And my friend, realize that it takes time to embody this. It's not like the flick of a switch. You can't just say, okay, tomorrow I'm going to stop resisting everything and I'm going to be in this perfect state of flow with the universe. Because even for me, for someone who has been practicing this for a long time, I still have moments where I feel stressed. My ego gets the better of me. I still get caught into like the first person perspective sometimes, so I'm not perfect. But I have improved a whole lot throughout this process, and just my perception of reality has transformed enormously. It has become so much more beautiful since I have been in calibration with myself, with my environment, with the information that's passing through me. So with that said, my friend, I would love to hear about your experiences with non-resistance and this philosophy, if it has helped you a lot, if it has improved your life. But with that said, thank you very much. I hope you have a wonderful day and take care of yourself. See you later.